Hey, everybody, welcome back to a Voice for Liberty podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Sparks. And in today's episode, we are talking about things that really don't get enough attention, in my opinion, which is really just the media spin machine. I mean, Rush Limbaugh used to call it the drive-by media. And I want to point out one of the largest media lies I see being spun right now. We just came out of an election season, but why the heck are we talking about 2024 already? But let's talk about the narrative. Let's talk about the psychology of what the left is trying to spin in their news media. And so, but before I get into that, I do want to encourage you guys, will you go over to mypillow.com and just check out what their holiday specials are right now? They have got some great deals going on. I really like if you're a mom with little kids, if you're a grandma with little kids, they have these awesome travel size children's pillows that has the word of God written on it. It's got stories like Jonah and Noah, just some really fun gifts for children, for grandchildren. And then when you're over there, get yourself something, get yourself some bed sheets, maybe some slippers. Those are a favorite around the office. Everybody's got a pair of the Mike Lindell slippers. And so just go check it out. Any type of thing that you purchase here. And if you use the promo code VOICE when you go to checkout, that helps me do this, helps me, hire an editor to edit these episodes so I don't have to sit here and do it myself all day. So if you want to go check it out, I would really appreciate it. So again, it's just mypillow.com and then use the promo code VOICE for your voice for liberty. All right, now here we go. Let's get into today's show. See, if you like that opening or not, I made it. Okay. I just thought it was so wild and zany, so different than the things that I see out there. So I had to edit it myself. I spent nearly 3 or 4 hours doing that. Plus, I was fighting with technology for nearly hours to the point where I called Larry and I said, Larry, this 11-year-old laptop, I need to replace it. We have to get me a new laptop. So I'm investing in the prophetic words that I've gotten about me having my own podcast show. I got a great word from Hank Kuhneman one time and a lot of others. And Hank said, I see something. You wrote something. You wrote it looks like this. Looks like this. And I'm just, if you're on the podcast, it's like, you remember that whole thing? Like, I'm pinching your head. I'm pinching your head. It's like he's holding his thumb and his pointer finger really close together because you just wrote this and I see it. I see it like expanding. It's expanding. It's expanding. And there's like a podcast. You have to do a podcast. And he was really adamant that you have to run ahead of what's coming. He's like, like the Pharaoh's chariots, you have to run ahead of them. And he's like, so you need to get ahead of this and start doing it. So that was a few months ago, actually, at a Mike Lindell event when he was doing the whole cyber symposium. And Hank was just kind of there for a podcast for Lance. And we were just kind of chit chatting. And all of a sudden he's like, well, God's telling me you're supposed to do a podcast, and you wrote something. And what he didn't know is that I had just written my whole magazine, which is where this show even came from. It's called A Voice for Liberty. I wrote this magazine, A Voice for Liberty, and it's all about how to get engaged in civics. It was birthed really from a group of about 1,500 women that I went and spoke in front of on the topic of legislation. And I was thinking, Lord, this is such a boring topic, legislation. How do we make this cool and fun? How do we make this engaging for women? And I felt like God just gave me this download, and I broke it up into 3 different sections. And I have this fun acronym because I'm an acronym type of a gal, and it's I am. And the first one is the I stands for inform. So we need to understand what is the biblical worldview when it comes to cultural topics, that a lot of these, quote, political topics aren't really political. They're actually biblical. God's word is so good about telling us what we should do on everything from abortion and life to judicial appointments, to traditional marriage, to taxation, to funding the police and a balanced federal budget. Like, look at all these topics: gun control, role of government. What does the Bible have to say about it? That's literally the first section of this magazine. And then the next part is in Inform is understanding what is the biblical worldview when it comes to our political platforms, because we're really not talking the last thing we actually talk about are politicians. Like when we there's all this talk about this politician and that politician and who you're voting for, who you're not voting for. But if you're really any person, doesn't even matter if you're a Christian or not, that fundamentally your worldview shapes what your beliefs are. And so your whole worldview, most of us are given a worldview normally before the age of 13. You've got a pretty solid worldview. And then through those teenage formative years, you're either agreeing with that worldview or you're reshaping your worldview based off of what you're coming in contact with. So by the time you're in your 20s, you're really set. And so that worldview now affects, what type of policy, what type of platform you're believing in, and then ultimately what type of politician you're going to vote for. But our biblical worldview needs to be the foundation that we really view everything else through. So when it comes to what platform, what political platform you're going to vote for, you have to look and see which one best aligns with the biblical worldview. And I don't know if you know this, but the Republican platform, it's actually guys like Dave Barton, really conservative Christian minds that really crafted the latest version of the political parties. Oh, I lost my camera a second. That's okay. We're going to keep going. So that's the first section, is inform. I'm just going to do a quick circle around, this magazine that I took the time to write, because God's heart was in it. It's like he downloaded all this to me. And so that's the I, is inform. The next one is activate. So we need to understand what are the things that we as individuals can start doing to really shaping culture in our community around us. First and foremost is vote. Make sure you vote. Make a pledge to vote. Sign something and hold yourself accountable to say, I am going to vote, and make sure you're registered. So those are the first two steps. Then also in activate, we want to start using our voice. We want to start talking to our local politicians. We want to engage with them. We want to know who they are. If you don't, go do some research. I show you how to do that. I show you all the websites to go look at. The other things, we want to pray for our nation. We want to know where our news is coming from. Everybody knows these days that media is essentially biased. I don't think anybody can really say, yes, this particular person, like we used to think of news, oh, it's unbiased. I'm not getting any opinion. I'm just getting the facts. That doesn't exist anymore. I really think at this point, I'm comfortable calling all media people content creators. Rachel Maddow is a content creator. Tucker Carlson is a content creator. They're they have a bias. They have an inherent bias that they bring. It's very hard to find organizations that are really fairly center. Now, I know there are people who endeavor to do that, but by and large, most of the things we're consuming on television or on social media has an inherent bias. So it's important to know what you're listening to and what you're taking in. The other things you could do as individuals: stop supporting woke capitalism. I have great resources in here of 2 different apps that you can download so you know where your money is going, how woke is a corporation that you're shopping at. And more importantly, there's this great organization. It's called Public Square. And so Public Square is an app that actually will show you conservative businesses in your area that share your worldview. So I was going to say I had a little promo code for that, but it's just, if you just download the Public Square app, I don't need to get credit or anything like that, but just go check it out, because I just think it's awesome that somebody's made such a cool resource like that. And so, yeah, so that's the whole activate section. There's a couple more things in here, but I won't go into it. And then the last one, the M. So if we do I am, the M stands for mobilize. And so mobilize is really linking arms and like locking your shields with other people who have the same vision for cultural transformation that you do. So taking your individual efforts, but then maximizing them with other people in your community or online. And so there's really great organizations out there you need to know about. In fact, I have a whole list of over 100 organizations that I put together that you could take a look at. Everything from prayer to local state level groups, all sorts of stuff. Anti-abortion groups. And, and even too, there's some great ladies groups. There's great women's groups right now. One of them is Moms for Liberty. They have been transformational in switching school boards and flipping school boards, especially in Florida. They had some big wins down there. They're really big on getting just some of the disgusting pornographic books that are in these schools out of the libraries. There's another one, Moms for America is great. Also, Concerned Women for America is great. So all sorts of stuff too. Even things like becoming a precinct committee person helps shape the direction of the party. You actually become you, and it's not hard to be a precinct committee person. And there's tons of people around. Precinct committee people are actually the people who put out all the signs. Do you ever wonder, like, oh, it's election day, where did all these signs come from? And then, like, it's the day after and all the signs are gone, and you're like, who does this? Precinct committee people do that. That's who do that. But other than, and it's only like a mile within your house. So there's really pretty tiny quadrants that need people like yourself. And also the coolest thing is, you, as a member of the party, you get to apply to be delegates. You get to vote on the different types of candidates that you're endorsing, the different policies that are passing within the Republican Party. So if you're ever like, oh, the party is just full of rhinos, Republicans in name only, this is just bleh, this is so bad. But you can actually become the solution. You can actually join as a precinct committee person and have influence within the party. There's so many other cool things in this magazine. And so again, it's called A Voice for Liberty. So this is the thing that I wrote. This is what Hank didn't know about. And he's like, I just see you wrote something and it looks like this. And look, doesn't it look like that? If you see on the podcast, it's a thickness of a magazine. And he was like, it looks like this. And then he's like, I just see it. It's turning into a podcast. So my point is a little background on why we even do this show. Why am I even trying to do this show? I'm trying to partner with the prophetic word to do what God, I think, is calling me to do, even though I feel like, who am I? We all have that imposter syndrome. Well, who am I? Who am I, Lord? Why am I doing this? What does my voice matter? Why would anybody listen to me? I don't know. But hopefully I can impart something, even just in that little magazine I told you about. And hey, if you want to get that magazine, you can go to, I think you can go to my website, followsadies.com, or I think you can even go a voice for liberty .com, and you can get it there and download it. So all that to say, it's so exciting, but we have to have these different types of voices. I really think God is calling so many people into social media, into just traditional media, radio, television, podcasting like this, because we have to get our voices out there. And that's really like, I'll come back to the magazine really quick. The reason I called it A Voice for Liberty is, one, I want to use my voice to fight for liberty. I think we have to preserve these fundamental freedoms that God's given to us in our nation and continue to be, even though we don't do it perfectly, America doesn't always do that perfectly, but continue to be a beacon of hope and life and prosperity in the world. That we have to use our voice to do that, a voice for liberty. The other thing is, my daughter's name is Liberty. So I want to use my voice for her, for the next generation, because I think that's why most of us, especially as a mother, I think we're looking around and saying, this is not the country I want to leave to my children. This is not the amount of national debt I want to leave to my children. I don't want to leave them that. I don't want to take, use something up and give my children something less than what I had. That's awful. So I think a lot of you think the same way as I do. And so, part of that is really just having intriguing conversations. And one of these conversations that I really wanted to have today was just the concept of, and something that Rush really talked about quite a bit. Rush used to harp on the bias in the media, and he used to call it the drive-by media. And it's because they would do like a hit job, right? They'd pick a topic and they do a hit job on it, and all the networks would say the same thing, and they have all the same talking points. And it's still like that today. It's just a total hit job. And so I see a lot of things today happening, around the election. And, we just came out of uh we're in 2022, and here we are, not even a day or 2 days later, and people are talking about, well, is Trump going to run? What's happening with Trump? I'm not voting for Trump. Are you going to vote for Trump? Oh, I just mean tweets. Can't do that. Oh, Ron DeSantis is so great. I love Ron DeSantis too. I'm a huge Ron DeSantis fan. As a former Floridian, I think he's amazing, and he won that race against, I think it was Andrew Gillum, by only 30,000 votes. And we always thank Escambia County and the Panhandle for pulling it out for the conservative votes. They didn't even need it this time. It was such a red landslide that DeSantis went through and cleaned up the voter fraud in Dade, in Palm Beach County, in amazing ways, where he won Miami-Dade County. That is unheard of for a Republican to do that. And he won, I think it was by like 1.5 million votes. I mean, something absurd. It was like a ridiculous amount of votes. So, you look at things like this, but then all of a sudden we have this narrative, and you have two things happening. One, the left has always been never Trumpers. They've never wanted Trump. And I'm going to play you a clip so we all remember how much they didn't want Trump, where it was a laughing stock to them. Just the mere thought of Trump winning. You remember it? Like, it was like they thought it was a joke. I mean, they're thinking this guy's just doing this for the media coverage. He's so like just over the top. And what are we even what are we even talking about? He's not going to become president. It's a laughing stock. It was a giant joke until it wasn't. Everyone thought Hillary was going to win. Everyone thought Hillary was going to win. I'm going to play you some clips. I think it's from the Michael Moore documentary that actually this clip is from. But then I also want to play for you the clips for today, the narrative that's being spun today. And it's, I'm going to need another graphic too in a second. But anyways, I'm going to play these clips for you, and then we're going to talk about the media spin and the narrative. Okay, so here's the I think this is from Michael Moore's documentary, and he's really retelling the story of Hillary's loss in 2016. Okay.
It was the night before the election, 2016. Everything seemed to be going as planned. Amateurs and experts alike had already called the election months ago.
There's not going to be a President Donald Trump. That's not going to happen.
Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States.
Donald Trump will never be elected president of the United States.
He's not going to be president.
Is there a path to victory for Donald Trump at this point?
No.
Do you still think she has a 100% chance of winning the election?
I do. I'm not sure the Republican Party is going to survive.
I would like to introduce to you
this is Jay-Z. And now she's hugging Beyonce.
Thank you all, and thanks to Jay-Z and Beyonce.
I mean, could you give her, I mean, it's ridiculous, the types of advantages that Democrats get over Republicans that she would even have. This is a giant concert. If you can't see it on the podcast, there's like a giant flag behind her, all of these different artists, all these different R&B rappers and stuff like that. And I mean, just ridiculous. It was ridiculous back then. And we just forget. I mean, it is a constant onslaught. It was an onslaught of he'll never be president. He's not competent. He'll cause World War III, all sorts of stuff that they were throwing out there. So I want us to remember that when we hear today's narrative. And so I'm going to play you a clip from, it was taken from Bannon's, it's a cold open Bannon had the other day, but it's also a montage of Democrat, MSNBC, CNN pundits commenting on, what a loser Donald Trump is. And he picked all of these loser candidates, and they all lost because he's such a loser. So let's listen to this clip.
Because Donald Trump just loses. I mean, again, he's the first president since Herbert Hoover to lose the House, the Senate, and the White House in one term. And then the 2022 disaster should have every conservative, should have every Republican saying no. And anybody that is not blaming Donald Trump for this loss isn't firmly connected to reality. And I guess they care more about letting Donald Trump continue to lose than they do about having Republicans and conservatives starting to win again.
Tell you one thing, however, we talk about the big we, including the conservatives and the moderates and the liberals who think Trump shouldn't run again. We talk about what we think of Biden, should he run again or not. These two people are ego-driven. There's nothing wrong with being ego-driven, but they are basically, I think of Trump as a guy at the steering wheel with the Secret Service trying to drive the car one way and he's trying to pull the car the other way. It doesn't matter what all the rest of us think. It's up to Donald Trump. And if he runs, he's going to be a menace to the Democrats, a menace to the other Republicans, because he's going to be the angriest guy there, vindictive as hell. And Joe Biden isn't going to listen to any of us except Jill, his wife, because when he ran for the Senate back in 1970,
I can't listen to Chris anymore. Who knew Chris was still around? I don't know what hole he crawled out of, but I haven't seen Chris Matthew in ages since what did he say? I got a tingling in my leg. I feel a tingling coming up my leg, something like that. That's the last thing I remember Chris Matthews saying anything about. Anyways, hopefully you guys, well, I don't know if you've been following politics that long, but I've been following politics that long since Chris Matthews actually was relevant. So I just want you to catch the media spin. I'm playing it because I don't want us to get sucked into the media brainwashing game. Not only do you have Democrats doing that, but you have establishment Republicans who are also anti-Trump. Same guys that were anti-Trump before he was elected, even more so after he was elected because they were forced to actually work with him. I mean, these are guys like Mitch McConnell, I mean, what was one guy's name? You remember Paul Ryan? I mean, what a disaster he was as Speaker of the House. But these are the same establishment Republicans that didn't want to work with Trump in the first place. And to say that Trump is a loser and he's constantly losing, one, I mean, there's certain things I can't even say on Facebook, and I want to play this on Facebook, but there were a lot of shenanigans. We'll just leave it at that. There were shenanigans that happened, and we can't talk about it. We just can't talk about it on this platform. So I'm not going to talk about it. But outside of that, they were also, some of these were just lousy Republican Party picks. I mean, really, who picks Dr. Oz? No MAGA conservative is coming out to vote for Dr. Oz, who used to be a frequent on Oprah Winfrey's show. I don't care what Dr. Oz tries to position himself as. I mean, at best, he's a moderate, okay? Republicans aren't coming out to vote for that. MAGA Republicans aren't coming out to vote for that. Bad candidates. And then let's talk about the fact that Mitch didn't fund most of the MAGA candidates. He didn't take Republican Party funds, didn't take funding and put it into these campaigns of these Republicans that were running. There's a lot of reasons they lost. But I want to show you something because I was actually talking the other day on Lance's podcast, and we started talking about this whole narrative that the media is spinning. And I got to thinking, I was like, but I mean, how many people really lost? Is it really that bad? I mean, how bad is this? I mean, is he really a loser? And so here's what I found out. This is so funny. So this is from Ballotpedia. And this is a very non-biased site. This is literally just data and information. And so and you can go look it up yourself, just endorsements by Trump. And it logs everything since 2017, all of his different endorsements. So this year in 2022, he had a total of 495 endorsements, most endorsements that he's ever done before. In the primaries, so if you're on the podcast, I'm going to read it to you. In the primaries, he had 241 endorsements and a success rate of 93%. When we go to the general elections, he had 254 endorsements with a success rate of 82%. His general election success rate, 82%, is the best it's ever been. He's still making Trump endorsements the best it's ever been. And so if you go to 2021, in 2021, his general, and there were only a handful that year, but his general election success rates were 67. But let's go back to 2020. So the last time we elected the House, there were 182 endorsements with a 78% success rate. Okay. We'll go back 2 more years to the next House race. 2018, he had 95 general election endorsements with a 59% success rate. So if you're tracking with me, not only did he have more endorsements this time in 2020, they've been building. They've almost doubling every single time. 2018, he had 95 endorsements. 2020, he had 182. In 2022, he had 254. All right. And his success rate percentage has been going up. I mean, it's remarkable. So the whole narrative, this entire narrative that he is a failure and he's a loser and everybody he picked is a loser is bupkis. It's just bupkis. And to say that it's his fault, I mean, why would here's what I don't get. This is like a former employees who used to work for me and people that I trained, and they're doing their own thing, they're living their life, and then but their performance in something I'm not even really even participating in, that now reflects on me, and I'm a loser because they lost. I'm like, what is that? What are you even saying? Right? It's like me making recommendations for people, and they're like, oh, all of your recommendations, eight eight made it and two didn't, and those two, you're a loser because those two didn't make it. I'm like, dude, I just made the recommendation. I'm not out here. Why does this reflect on me? I don't even think Trump thinks of it that way. So it's such a weird media narrative to say Trump's a loser because, and he's picking losers, and nobody wants MAGA anymore. Nobody wants that. I'm like, nothing could be further from the truth. That is so incorrect. And the idea that Trump is even the epitome of the MAGA movement. I mean, the whole point of the MAGA movement, and we call it MAGA, but really its genesis, I would say, was back in the Tea Party days. That it was Tea Party. It was when we were watching the presidential debates with 14 different Republicans up there, and everybody sounds exactly the same, except for this crazy guy, Donald Trump, who used to host the Apprentice show that was just hilarious. You're fired. You're fired. I mean, that's what we knew at the time. But boy, was he saying the things everybody was really thinking. And you're like, oh man, you can't say those things. That's so politically incorrect. You can't say those things. You remember listening to Trump? I mean, that was at a time in America where it was unpopular to say Merry Christmas. Do you remember when the politically correct movement was so intense that they were telling you, "Yo, you can't say Merry Christmas. Oh, you got to say Happy Holidays. You can't say that. Can't say referencing Christ, the word Christ, maybe Merry Xmas, but you couldn't even say that back then." And Trump just blew that out of the water. He did not fit the establishment narrative. He did not need establishment money. And newsflash, he still doesn't. All these people coming out, well, I'm not going to pay, I'm not going to support Donald Trump. The guy doesn't need your money. Why do you think he's running for president? You think he's running for president because he's getting something out of it? This is somebody who feels a mandate to help save America like I do or you do. But I just want to highlight the fact, the absurdity of the media narrative and the fact that Republicans buy into it, establishment Republicans buy into it, and then even just everyday Republicans that are like, well, it's the mean tweets. I mean, he's so self-focused. Listen, I love DeSantis too. Let's reframe it, shall we? Why don't we say, how lucky are we that we have 2, 3, 4 amazing 2024 options as presidents? The Democrats can't say that. Who are they going to run? Stacey Abrams? Constant election loser, Beto O'Rourke? Will it be Gavin Lockdown Newsom? Will it be him? Who will they put forward? Will it be Biden? Remember when he hid in his basement Biden? Will he continue to shake hands with imaginary people? I mean, it's not any of those people. None of those people compare at all to a Carrie Lake, to a Ron DeSantis, to a Donald Trump who believes in America First policy. All 3 of them, I would be happy. How lucky are we? Thank God we have 3 or 4. And who even knows who's about to emerge? One thing we haven't really spoken about on this podcast yet is the economics of the next 2 years. That there is a economic recession downturn that's coming. And it's weird, it's like when you're a realist and you try to tell people the truth, you try to like prepare them and warn them, and it's like, you're just so negative. You're so negative. You can't say those things. I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to tell you there's a flood's coming. Please prepare an ark. And there is a financial storm coming, and you should be thinking about preparing a financial ark. So my point is, between now and the next 2 years, we don't know what's even coming, who will emerge. And so, I think there's a lot of things to reframe. I think there's a lot of things to be thankful for coming out of this Thanksgiving holiday. And there's a lot of things we don't even need to decide right now. But please don't buy into the media's drive-by narrative that Trump's a loser, and anybody who's ever thought about supporting him is a loser. Because you know what? They all didn't like him the first time around. I just played the clips for you. You can go back and listen to him. We had 2 years of Russiagate, of making up ridiculous stories about him. I mean, I don't know how informed you guys are, but I mean, there was the whole what is it? It's like what do they call dossier, Russian dossier that supposedly, I think it was McCain who presented it and got it to a House committee, and then they presented it to Trump, and it was this whole big story. I mean, disgusting things like Trump was in bed with prostitutes and they were peeing on the bed. I mean, disgusting things that, I mean, and that's the thing. It's so absurd sometimes, the types of lies that the devil makes up. But it's so old, it's new. It was all in the book of Acts. Tons of false accusation in the book of Acts and persecution of the saints. And so it's not a new tactic. It's what's done. But we got to be shrewder and wiser and in tune with it. That's my whole point. That don't buy the spin job. Don't sit there and I mean, how easy was it for me to go and Google it? Lance was talking about it. I was like, what is the history of his endorsements? I know there's more than, the 5 they're talking about. Turns out there were over 200, 280, something like that, with an 82% success rate, the most he's ever gotten. This wasn't a narrative 4 years ago. This wasn't a narrative 3 years ago when the success rate was far lower. This is the best success rate he's had. So I don't know what people are talking about. So I'm just saying Trump isn't a loser. Have an endorsement from him looks like it would really help you. And so who knows what we'll get, but I don't think it's a conversation for now. I just think we should be smarter and shrewder and do the research and go look at this type of information. Don't sit there and believe whatever, the news is telling you. And you can't even believe what Republican talking heads are saying. I mean, they're just as swampy as a lot of the Democrats that are out there. They don't want change. Everybody's there getting their paychecks, the pork bills that are going through, getting paid off, inside trading. I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked at Nancy Pelosi's trading history, but the woman she's better than most of the people on Wall Street. I mean, it's amazing to see what her husband is picking as stocks. There's actually entire algorithms dedicated to watching her public trades because she has to make those things known every, I think it's 45 days. You have to file and say, hey, here's what I've been buying and selling. I mean, it's just really crazy what a great choice of stocks and bonds that she is. So these are the things that happen in Washington. And a lot of these politicians don't want to change. They like things exactly as they are. They don't want a Trump coming in. They don't want a DeSantis coming in. And please don't fool yourself. Do not fool yourself. The media hit job that they did on Trump, they will do to DeSantis. They will make up lies about him. They will come after him. I mean, the same disgusting stuff that they said about Trump and made up about him, they will do the same thing to DeSantis. They're just not doing it yet, but they will do it. They'll do it to Carrie Lake. They'll do it to whoever the nominee is, because that's how the game is played. They make things up. They try to blackmail you. There's all sorts of stuff that's done. And I mean, look at the countless lawsuits. They try to bury you in lawsuits and legal fees that you can't fight. Trump just happens to have the money to fight them all. And praise God, he's an honest guy because they haven't found anything. If they had something on Trump, please, if they had something on Trump, we would actually know about it now. And they don't have anything. They always lose these lawsuits over and over again, but they keep bringing them. So I want you to know, don't kid yourself. It's going to happen to whoever the next nominee is. So be aware, be open, and do your research. All right. So that's today's episode. A little more politically focused today. And I'm just saying it's not necessarily defense of Trump. I hope it's not your takeaway. My point is you got to know the narrative and don't fall prey to the media hit job. We need to do what Rush used to do, which is lampoon it and play just the countless clips like that. Like, here's a clip, here's a clip, here's a clip, here's a clip, because they're in lockstep. And they only target the things that they fear. So just keep that in mind. When they target Trump, when they target Christian nationalism, quote unquote Christian nationalism, which I don't even really know what that is. It's Christians who love their nation. It's Christians who think they have a right to be in political office. That their worldview is somehow inherently evil, according to a lot of these different media outlets. I don't know what it is, but my point is that they only target the things that they fear. They target the church waking up. They target the idea of Christians taking um, taking the convictions of Christ, the mind of Christ, the heart of Christ, the emotions of Christ, and bringing that into dark places like Washington, D.C. swamp and being a light in a dark place. They don't want that to happen. And so, but God is waking people up. And I do think God is reinserting himself into the American consciousness, and that I think that there's a large move of God that's coming, and partnered with that is an awakening to civic engagement at a local level and at a federal level. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in the coming years, just like in this last election, there's going to be a lot of people who feel a call by God. They feel a destiny implanted inside of their heart that they're supposed to help preserve, protect, and influence the direction that America is going in for the better. And I don't think that that's the removal of fundamental freedoms for people who don't share our worldview, but I do think it's trying to bring honesty, integrity, a balanced budget, responsible fiscal spending, truth to these different institutions in these places. It's reformation is what we're after. It's a reformation that's coming. So just realize if you're under the microscope for some reason, you're right where you're supposed to be or over the target. All right, guys,